Oh,
Okay.
go ahead, Tom. I just wanted you to
Yep.
talk a little bit about, your grandson's playing minor hockey, and we were talking about. You said he'd be a checker, and I said, well, our elite teams and nationals, our provincial teams, and they don't check. They're just the highly skilled players. So the ones that get all the ice time and attention, and the checkers like us, sort of go by the wayside.
Yeah, no, there's something for whatever reasons, there's some sort of sex appeal to, for being offensively gifted.
Yeah,
When in fact the bread and butter, as you know, Wally, of being good teams and being a good participant on a team
yeah,
is being able to play both sides of the puck well and and even sometimes with a deeper commitment required to defense,
yeah,
putting yourself in a good spot by being able to read, the flow of the offense and where things are directed and putting yourself in a position to contribute to, getting the puck back. And,
yeah,
it's interesting, Wally. I remember, I don't know if I told you this story, but Pavel Datsuk was coming off an injury. He and I in Detroit, I was working with him on his return to hockey to playing. And so we did a drill, where I was passing pucks to him and he was doing something beyond that. And he came over to me, and I'll tell you, he's the most talented, skilled, um, aware, hockey sense player defensively that I've ever been around.
yeah,
And when I say skill, defensive skill was remarkable. All four of his skating teammates knew exactly what was going because of his leadership defensively.
yeah,
But what I was going to tell you is that we did a drill for maybe 20 minutes, and he wanted me to pass him the puck. So of course I was bearing right down, just snapping him in and trying to hit this, the stick blade, and I
yeah,
was doing a good job, but I was really bearing down. He came over to me and said, Tommy, he says, I don't want it on my stick.
yeah,
He says, I want it in the air. I want it behind me. I want to have to catch it and knock it down. I want to have to play it off the boards.
yeah,
And I thought, that's hockey.
yeah, yeah.
It was amazing. It was
Well,
amazing.
when everybody gets on, and I'm glad we recorded it because I'm going to edit that portion out. Players like him and all of the players that get to that level, they have to learn to play defense. And he wasn't a high draft pick, was he?
I think he was seventh round.
Yeah,
Crazy, amazing, amazing. I,
yeah,
I think that I don't know Kenny. I remember Kenny, and drafting him, and when I saw him, Wally, he looked like he was 12 years old and
yeah.
weighed about 70 pounds.
Hi, Craig. We're just talking about Pavel Datsuk and Tom coaching him. He had telling an interesting story about we got talking about elite players growing up and not learning to play a team game. And he agrees and he knows that, but
Good response.
he shared a conversation with Datsuk as being one of the smartest players without the puck that he's ever seen. So
Yeah.
you might go back to that early. I'll be letting people in off and on. And I am recording right now, and Jordan's joined us. Thank you, Jordan. And McKinley's on as well. Um, we still got a couple minutes till the kickoff. So, Tom, I, if you could continue, why were we talking about Datsuk and how did it all come about that talking about Pavel Datsuk?
Sure. So, hi everybody. Wally and I were just chatting about my 9-year-old grandson playing playing hockey. I thought he was going to be a playmaker, but now I think he's a defensive player, which brought to mind Pavel Datsuk, who is probably the most skilled defensive player I've ever seen in terms of hockey sense, in terms of steering and dictating the play, in terms of a quick stick, takeaways. tracking back, lifting sticks, all those types of things, and then making some magic happen beyond that. And it's interesting because one of the stories I was telling Wally is that I was helping Pavel rehab and coming back from injury to play again, and I was doing a passing drill with him. Pretty much in the neutral zone more than anywhere else. But and I was telling, as I mentioned to Wally, I was bearing down. I was really working hard to put the passes on his stick, and I'm really intense about it. And back in the day, the one thing I could do was pass a puck, so I thought I had a chance. But he skated over to me after about 6 or 7 minutes of doing this, and he said, "Tommy," he said, "I don't want the puck on my stick." He said, "You have to make it harder." He said that I want it behind me. I want it in the air. I want to have to knock it down. I want to have to play it off the boards. And I thought, and you mentioned I coached Pavel Datsuk. That, to be honest with you, Pavel Datsuk coached me. And it was remarkable at that age. And I'd already coached a few years in the NHL as a head coach. And here I am learning from the mentee teaches the mentor, and it was just sensational. And he is one of the most gifted players I've seen on both sides of the puck for sure. But how everyone could read off of him defensively was remarkable and fun to be around.
Well, Craig, it's 9 o'clock. We're getting people to join. Travis has just joined us, and I'm recording this. And Tom and I sort of been talking about you coming on and your experience at the Nationals. And you and Jordan have extensive experience working with Team Alberta and the Program of Excellence. I think Tom had originated in your day. And
Yeah.
yeah, the object of the program, of course, is to prepare players for national teams, whether they're U18, 17, junior 22, or senior going right up to the Olympics. That there's sort of a template of development that we try to adhere to. And Craig's been through it with Team Alberta. He had a number of players from Alberta and GHC in particular on that team. And there's lots to be learned from that and lots of lessons. And Tom, they do relate to what you were talking about in terms of the ability or inability to think about playing without the puck. Because if you don't gain possession, you don't get the puck to display your extreme skills.
Mhm.
So, Craig, I'm going to let you kick off the topic. And what I'm trying to get out of it for JHC is what can we do better to serve the needs of Team Alberta and Team Canada in the program of excellence, players growing up and evolving to that level? What were the lessons for you and some of the stories from this experience? You mentioned 8 ice times or so before you got to competition, and you had to make a team selection and prepare the best of the best in the country to play against each other.
Yeah, it was. This is my fourth time through it. Actually, McKinley actually played for me way back in 2000, and I want to say 19. So she might be able to bring some perspective now that she's coaching from the player side of it. But I think the number one thing I take away from it is every year I do it is it's such an incredible experience. The way Hockey Canada has that tournament set up and how they take care of the athletes and the coaches. My only job was to coach. I didn't have to worry about anything else. The player's only job was to play. So from that side of it, when you're running your everyday program and worry about hotel rooms and buses and food and all of that, we'd have to worry about any of it. It was all laid out. We're given our times to eat. We're given our times to bus. We're given our times to play. And then all we had to do is build our team building and our videos and our things like that around it. So the experience, I mean, again, I've done 3 of these U18s and 1 winter games. Each one of my experiences are better and better. And this one was awesome. The kids were great to work with. They were open-minded a lot. From being a Team Alberta, we've run into the same issue all 4 times is we're not ready to play at that level for games 1 and 2, but we're really good by games 4, 5, and 6. But I think the biggest thing I take away from this group is those kids were not good playing without the puck. So they play on some really good hockey teams. I mean, we had 5 or 6 junior Oilers who won the national championship, and I think have lost combined 3 games in 2 years. And we had 4 OHA Edmonton kids who I think have lost maybe 1 game this year. So they're used to playing with the puck. Now you get at that level where everyone's the same. Everybody can skate the same, shoot the same, play the same. The intangibles of understanding what to do without the puck, how to get to open ice, how to track back, who to pick up the fourth defenseman jumping into the rush are things they don't do in their everyday because they're playing on super teams and they have the puck 75 to 80% of the game. So we really had to learn that quickly, and that's where a lot of video came in. The other part I learned is a lot of kids aren't held accountable. Today, the way things are set up and the way the leagues are formed, kids can leave at a whim if they want. So if coaches push them too hard, they're gone. They just go to another team the next year. So there's no real mechanism for coaches to be accountable and hold them accountable. So when they get to something like this and they're not playing their very best, they don't get on the ice like they do in their club teams. A lot of kids take that as a bad thing and they sulk and go in the wrong direction. So it wasn't just our team, but we saw it. I saw it on other teams as well too. Knowing a lot of the players from Manitoba and Saskatchewan, some of those similar things showed up. But at the end of it all, we had some pretty good buy-in, and I'd say our last couple games were our best, and that's usually what you're looking for in short-term competition: getting better every day and building that buy-in, and watching kids play roles that they're not used to and excelling in those roles.
Craig, the one thing I talked about today, even with the U13 coaches, was the players all say, well, boy, I want to play center. No, I want to play right wing. And I know when they get to the level of trying out for you, they're not going to get to choose where they play. You've got to put the chemistry together of what combinations are going to play. And there's an awful lot of centers that are going to have to play wing at the next level. Did that happen with you?
Oh
This
yeah, oh yeah. I think of our 12 forwards, 9 were natural centers, and obviously there's only 4 lines, so we had to play a little bit with it. I mean, sometimes we started games with certain kids and we moved them out and moved kids in halfway through the game just to try and find that right chemistry. Some accepted it, some bought into it, some loved it. Others didn't like having to play the wing and the wall because, as we found out as well, most other provinces have some very large defensemen who like to pinch. And if you're playing that wall in your D zone, the expectation is to take that bump and fight to get that puck out. And a lot of the kids weren't used to it and didn't like it. So it takes a little bit of convincing. But again, that comes back to the buy in piece. And I think we set that up well as we really, from day one, we said we have to bump, we have to defend. And as the tournament got on, we got better at defending, we got better at bumping.
McKinley, when you tried out, were you a center and then had to become a winger?
Yeah, I was played center, and then when I went to nationals with Craig, I was on the wing. So
How was that mentally for you?
I feel like I knew it was coming, so I don't think it was like that much of a shock. And I feel like throughout like my minor hockey, I kind of played everywhere too.
Yeah.
But just like kind of building off what you said, it is important for the girls to know like that being like an adaptable, because when you do move on, when you go to university, when they're changing lines weekly, like it's a lot different. So
Well, today I talked to the U13 coaches about that because they've got players that want to play right wing, and play positioning is more interchangeable than ever, Craig. And I don't know if that I'm thinking too far ahead, but I feel you don't line up at a position for a face-off. The ultimate game is interchanging positions and being first, second, third, and just reacting to the play, whether it's on attack or on defense. And I don't know that we're there yet, but there is a big learning curve, time for those players that they want to move to the next level to be prepared for that. And I think we need to do that with GHC at all the levels. So, Craig, please continue to share some of the stories of the competition and putting it together and things that, personal things that you might have had to deal with specific players and how the responses went and how, you really as a coach, you evaluate the players in terms of, are they accepting it? Are they coachable? Are they accountable? Can you trust them? Because whoever you play for at the elite level, you've got to be able to get on board with their philosophy. So go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I think the buy-in piece is always the biggest, and that's just not even from style of play, but it's also from roles. I mean, when I look at our six defense, when I was in charge of the D side of it, all six defensemen on our team play top minutes. They all play power play one. They all play penalty kill one. They all play against their team's top players. But when you come into that tournament, we had to find roles for some of them, and holding a few of them accountable to certain situations. It was a change for them. Like someone wondered why I wasn't on the ice the last 5 minutes of the game. Well, you turn the puck over three times your last three shifts, and you gave up a breakaway. The fact is that I don't trust you in that position for that game. So the conversation around trust and building that trust and understanding how do you get on the ice in a game? If your coach doesn't trust you on the defensive side of the game, you're not going to play. I'm sure Tom can tell you when he was coaching the NHL, he's not putting the forward out there he doesn't trust going to get a puck out on the wall in the last 2 minutes of a game when you're up by one. And a lot of these kids don't understand that because they're just put on the ice no matter what because they're the team's best players. And they just get to play. They don't have to earn their ice. They don't have to have that conversation. And a lot of them, it was hard, especially a couple who never had it and a couple of the younger ones. And to their credit, they took it to heart. They got better. They tried. You could see them working at their game. I think it's just, playing for top teams sometimes as a defenseman or even defensive hockey, you're not really top of mind of it. You don't quite understand it because the puck's always on your stick and you're always driving the offense or you're jumping into a rush. When you're playing Team Ontario, who's got 15 of the 20 Team Canada kids that played in the rivalry series back in the summer on it, that's a whole different ballgame. You're not surfing up the neutral zone anymore. You're absorbing the defense. You're trying to put pressure on entries versus backing off. And if you give them time and space, they make plays. And a lot of times they don't see it. So that trust piece is big for all coaches. I mean, coaching in a position where you get hired and fired, if you're not going to trust your players, that player's not getting on the ice. And a lot of kids these days don't understand that.
Tom, I think it's a good time. You said buy-in, Craig. And Tom, you shared with me the story your first year coaching major junior national team. And you mentioned the covenant because we've all done the covenant. The coaches sitting here today have been through the covenant. And I regard that as a way of creating or initiating buy-in to a philosophy of doing things the right way as a team. Can you share that, Tom?
I'm happy to, Wally. I can tell the group this was it would have been Winnipeg's World Junior Championship in 1998-99. And at the time, I'd been in Vancouver and had been fired. I'd come back to Hockey Canada and was VP of hockey operations. And George Burnett was the head coach named at that time. And George took a job with Anaheim. And it's kind of interesting, and I appreciate your patience with this. But I sat in a room with Dave Branch, Gilles Courteau, Bob Nicholson, Murray Costello, and I can't recall the other individual, but I was there as VP Hockey Operations to help identify a replacement for George. And we had about 12 or 14 outstanding names up on the board. And I thought for sure there's a head coach in here. This is not a problem. And as we started to talk through it, Dave said, I have an idea. And okay, what's your idea? He said, Tom, why don't you coach the team? And I thought, oh boy, okay, this is completely unexpected. I was not at all expecting that. The reason I share that with you is that I did take the job. I was VP Hockey Ops at the same time as getting prepared to coach in Winnipeg. But the whole idea of the story is that I came in here not knowing a player, really, having had nothing to do with the player selection, to be honest with you. And we needed to make sure that we were galvanized as a group as quickly as possible when I got them at the selection camp. And so with that being said, I did come in with a little bit of leverage because I'd coached, under 17, under 18, under 20 prior to 1998, 99. And I'd also coached in the NHL, regardless of what kind of a job I had done. There was some cachet there. But I did not want to rely only on that. I wanted to make sure there was a mechanism in place where we could all share a collective commitment, to what was in front of us, and that was the World Junior Championship, and that we would all take ownership for our own application, to the team goal. And so I came. I don't know how I came up with this, but it was about the covenant. And we played a couple of exhibition games, but our last game was against Russia in Kenora, Ontario. And prior to the game that afternoon at our team meal, we brought out the covenant, and on the covenant was it was blank, and on the covenant was just a sort of a square with the Hockey Canada logo in the background and whatnot. And I said, what we're going to do here before we play tonight is identify how we're going to tackle this tournament. And I mentioned to them, you build a tournament just like you build a game. And with that, we need to make sure that with your participation, we identify with those things that are non-negotiable in how we're going to play, what we're going to be responsible for, what our identity is going to be, and what people will say about us when we're done. So we went through about an hour and a half of just chatting about this and writing things out. And then we had it applied to this plastic sort of almost like a tarpaulin. And when they got to the rink that night, it was in their dressing room and it had everything that we talked about on it. And I don't remember I think it maybe was "Wind from Within" was our phrase of expertise, if you will. And then we had everybody sign it, and it was almost like a player contract, and a performance contract of sorts. But because we'd talked that through and we'd already had a couple of practices and we'd had one exhibition game already, they knew what we were looking for and how we had to play. They knew that we were looking to build a competition. They knew that we were looking for people that would be able to do, as you've just spoken to, Craig and Wally alluded to, is not necessarily playing your preferred position, but making sure that your performance on the team was geared towards excellence, not so much perfection. It's a spontaneous, impulsive sort of game, but it was geared towards excellence, and we had to share this collective commitment to approaching this together. And that game that we played that night, I think we won 5-4. It was a phenomenal game, way better than the final that we played 2 weeks later against Russia. It was just a tremendous game where we were able to extract a ton of footage of things that we could use to teach how we wanted to improve ourselves, but also identify with things that actually correlated with our covenant. And, from that, we had buy-in right away. I didn't have to coach. I coached to the covenant. I coached to what they identified as being absolutely necessities of how to play and perform well and win the World Junior Championship. So I coached to that. Sure, we're talking about exits. Sure, we're talking about tracking. Sure, we're talking about transition in the defensive zone and all those things. But all I had to talk to was we want to play fast. And so that really does incorporate getting pucks in behind the D. It doesn't include turnovers at the blue line. And checking fast. And so all I did was coach to the covenants, and they knew exactly what we were talking about because the covenants were non-negotiable. And I skipped over guys a number of times, because we lacked the attention to detail in some of these areas. That was my level of accountability with a team that were just getting to know me. Them. The covenant was our insurance policy, and it really, in fact, held us together. It was the glue that allowed us to perform, from within ourselves. We didn't look for anything extraordinary, anything outside of who and what we were, but we certainly established an identity and built our tournament and ended up playing in the final game, losing to the Russians in overtime. When we were a team that was sort of earmarked to maybe get to the medal round and possibly not. Our defense was our bread and butter. But the covenant was the insurance policy, and there's no doubt in my mind that it served us well. And I would tell you, in one way or another, in some form or another, a covenant is your insurance policy as long as you're giving the players an opportunity to participate in its development, maybe even use their language. Whatever helps them understand they have ownership here, and you are the conductor of the orchestra.
Craig, I don't know whether or not you did any work like that in the short term, but I do know Barry Midori, long before you got involved, he was doing the mission statement exercise with the teams. And he had to put in a lot of time with the parents and the mission statement exercise and constantly communicate with them about the purpose of what they were doing and their identity and what Hockey Canada, Hockey Alberta wants to develop. And there are some objective things that I call cardinals that would be a violation of everyone's covenant. And Craig, I'm really curious as when you encounter them, how you address them, and how they were, how you were able to deal with them to get the most out of your group. And I'll just throw one cardinal at you. The best of the best stay out on the ice too long on many teams, and it's not addressed by coaches consistently. And that's a violation of a covenant. And did you have any problems initially and eventually get them to accept shift lengths being much more energetic by being shorter?
Yeah, we did. We ran into some of that early on. And again, a lot of these kids aren't held to 40 or less second shifts. They're allowed to pretty much do what they want. So we've run into it a couple times. I think what we did before we left, hang on here, Wally, is we did a values session. So we didn't do the covenant full on like you and I talk about we do here. We did a values session where the players came up with 4, 5, 6 values that meant to them, but they had to tell us why and explain exactly why they went. And we started breaking up into small groups, then got to 2 bigger groups, and we came with our list. And in the end, I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but they were things such as family, trust. The big one was dialed, and what dialed meant to the group was easy enough for us as coaches is looking at a kid. You dialed, and that meant, are you ready to go? Have you done your homework? Are you prepared to play? And we could use it mid-game. We could use it in between periods. So how we kind of went about that as a staff is, fortunately now everybody has video, so we always have time to do video, so we could utilize that, talk to the kids about some of the things that we're seeing, but we used our values to talk to our covenants. So turnovers, the blue lines, especially offensive zone entries, trying to toe drag through the neutral zone, turning pucks over, was one of our biggest challenges to get because that's what they're used to doing and being able to, but you can't really play fast and you can't really get a good forecheck going if you're turning pucks over in those areas. So a lot of that came back to trusting your teammates. So, your teammates are your family. Do you trust them? Would you do this at home if it's your parents? So we were able to use some of those buzzwords that they put on their values for the team to help us get through those situations. It wasn't the full covenant, but we felt going down this path with this group was better. They came up with some great ideas. We asked them how they wanted that to be represented. So they came up with the Alberta province outline with a tree, and then they had all the routes connected to all the hometowns of the kids, and then the birds were in the leaves of the tree. So it was a pretty neat little thing we had up in our dressing room and allowed us to get back to it. It wasn't a saying, it wasn't a buzzword, it was things that they meant to them. And by us referring to it throughout the tournament, it helped us break through to them. This is what you guys picked. Like, we didn't have to talk about systems. We didn't have to talk about forechecks or any of that stuff. We just talked about the values of what the team brought and when they weren't doing it right. That helped us get through some tough spots.
Now, this is something in my role mentoring U13, I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding that the shift lengths, we all get in stat at every level. And I check the in stat every day of all of our teams. And the U13 teams are very balanced. So I've been looking at a few of the other teams, and they aren't. And some coaches are getting a little more nervous about winning and tend to be giving more people ice time. And as an association, we're sort of there to develop and let all those kids develop. And I think in terms of being accountable to that, we want coaches to be responsible for that. Manage the bench, don't shorten it. And that's sort of my own little line. And it's done me well over a long period of time. So, Craig, Josh Gosling talked to me. This was a shocking thing. An elite player, one of the better players in the team, he had to sit for a shift or two because she couldn't play defensively. And he asked her, and she said to him, well, I don't have to. I've always had the puck. So at our level, we've got those exceptional players who are going to have the puck more often than not. And but they still have to develop the behaviors and the work ethic and the habits that build the team, I think. Am I making sense here, Craig?
Oh no, you're bang on, Wally. That was part of our downfall is we didn't know how to play without the puck. When the puck was on our stick, we made a lot of really cool things happen and created lots of scoring chances and had some nice, D zone exits and great plays. It's when we didn't have the puck, we had difficulty picking up the right people, going to the right areas, anticipating the game of where it's going to go, and just generally playing the game fast without the puck. We were pretty slow without it. We were fast with it. And again, that comes back. It started some work today out with. I jumped on the ice with the U13 Red team today because I haven't been on with them yet, and they were doing some defensive zone work in one end and just some face-off work in another. And just the ability to talk to these kids about why we defend and how to defend, one hand on your stick, why we go do the things we do and use our stick to steer and stick on puck and those things. Those are values that at the 18 level we were struggling with in our D zone, struggling with stick on puck. A lot of times we went into the battle in the corner, two hands on our stick to pin the player, and the pass came by our feet. Like those are just little things that we could develop the habits earlier. And I know all three of our coaches at the U13 level are doing a good job at it. Our U15s, we could push that a little bit more. But those playing without the puck is becoming more at the top levels because you're not getting it as much because a lot of our teams, again, our AAA team, we have two top teams in the league and the rest are middle of the pack. The CSSHL has two top teams. I call them super teams where every player leaves and goes to at some point. Those two teams aren't getting better because they don't have to play without the puck. Then they get into these situations and those kids struggle. And they get on to college and a lot of those kids struggle at the NCAA Division I level or at the e-sport level because they haven't had to play the game without the puck. I think that's an area we can push a little bit more. To touch on your shift length piece, Wally, I do the same as you. Every Monday I go through all the games on the weekend. I'm looking for shift differences, shift time on ice. If there is some big differences, there's conversations with coaches as to why. Lots of times there's an injury or it turns into this kid is in the power play, not the penalty kill this week, and we had 6 power plays and no penalty kills. There's some of those situations that do go on at some of the higher levels. But the interesting thing for me, Wally, is our shift length in general for most of our teams is too long. We're getting outchanged. So when I pull up a U18 AA and our kids are getting 17 to 19 shifts in a game, they're getting 22 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. The other teams are getting 24 and 25 shifts on average. So as an association, we are getting outchanged. Our shifts are longer, and we have kids playing on the ice for a minute plus on most of our teams right now and not 45 seconds or less. So it's pretty interesting to dig into that side of it too.
The idea of shift length, I've got 2 stories. Jordan, I'm going to ask you to share your story when you brought out the volleyball flip charts, trying to reinforce that when you coach the U18 AA team. But the story that shocked me the most was, I believe it was Sochi Olympics, and Mike Babcock coached. The shift lengths were 30 seconds. And Crosby had some 20-second shifts. And that was probably one of the most dominating team play efforts by our team. Now, I'm not suggesting that, but hockey's not an aerobic game. It's a burst, sprint, coast, adjust your pace game. And if you play longer than 40 seconds, you're going to be tired. You're going to disrupt the chemistry of the other lines. And you're not addressing a cardinal of respecting the team and the ice time that the lines need to play together. And the teams need to learn all situations. Now, there is a point, Craig, and you and I sort of butt heads on it. There's a point that you would shorten the bench to win. And myself, I'm more or less the opposite. I just roll the dice and hope it happens. But I found that when I didn't head coach and I let the defenseman coach change the D and the forwards change the D, I just let them do what they wanted, and I looked to see if those star players were going out too soon. Were they heaving? And if they were heaving, I called them back and I explained to the coach looking after that they're too tired to play at their best. Even though playing tired, they can still probably be as good as most players. So, Jordan, you probably accomplished what you did was an exercise on the bench that I thought it was amazing. But can you share that story of the flip charts and the shift lengths and how it worked for you?
Sure, Wally. Yeah, much like Craig had mentioned, you have players that are at the top end of the skill level, and in many times they get the opportunity just to do whatever the heck they want. And so in coaching U18 AA, I had lots of kids coming out of U15 that didn't understand what a shift length was, what an appropriate shift length was. And so we tried different things, including the old let's skate for 40 seconds and see how you feel after it in practice and some of those, and it still wasn't sinking in. So it was just more by good luck than good management. I was thinking about, well, how can we show it visually for the kids on the bench? And I happened to be going through our phys ed storage room at my school, and the volleyball flip chart for flipping the score for when you're playing half court was there, and I grabbed it and took it to the rink, and we stuck it on the bench and did the math of, well, you should have 30 shifts a period. And so every line that went out on the forward side, they would flip one half of it, trying to get to 30, and the D pairings would flip on the other end, and we'd see how close we could get to 30. And it was pretty amazing that after a while, they were really thinking about it. And there was actually a couple of games where, especially second period long change, where we didn't play very well. And all I had to do was send that chart back into the dressing room with them. I'd give it to the last kid going into the room and say, hey, take that in. And so that's sitting in the middle of the floor in the dressing room. And when they're seeing that there's only 20 shifts there, they can start to figure out, well, what's going on? Why are we playing so much slower than the other team? Well, as Craig was saying, we're getting outchanged. And so that was a visual that we used, and I haven't had to use it this year, but it was one that I'd used different times, and it actually worked because it allowed the kids to see you're in it together as a team, and you're not taking ice from your teammates, and when everybody's taking appropriate shift lengths, we're competing a lot better. So it was one of those things that just worked as a visual reminder. The other one was with the Instat piece and taking the calculations of the shifts of players, and you take the names off of them and just giving them a chart with the shifts, the total time minus, and having them do the math, figuring out what each of the 20 players on the team, what their average shift length was. And then at the end of it, giving them the strip of paper of which kid they were, and them having them to figure it out. And some of them were were a little surprised, and especially early on when you do that and you have some discrepancies early on of some taking longer shifts than others, and understanding that how important it is that we're fresh on the ice. And Craig's used the line before that we change when it's appropriate for the team, not when it's appropriate for you. And I know I'm paraphrasing you a little bit, Craig, but not quite right. But it's the gist of it is the players start to understand that, and we actually practice changing. Now it's something that we do, practicing putting pucks deep and one forechecking and the rest changing, and changing the forechecker immediately when it can. So it's that piece of taking advantage of the change.
Wally,
Yes.
just to Jordan and Craig's comments here, I think like change is a part of life, and I think that and you're right. This was the World Cup in 2017 in Toronto, and I did a talk with OK Tire owners and operators in New Orleans, and OK Tire is a Canadian company, and there were 600 of them there, and my talk was going to be on change. And I actually, well, you can appreciate where I would use the hockey platform to talk about change. Hockey is one of the few games that changes on the fly, that's perpetual. A lot of other sports stop, make their change, adjust their plays or whatever. Hockey is one of the few that changes on the fly. I started my presentation with the number 39 on my drop-down screen. And I said, and I just, I asked people, what do you think this is? And nobody had any idea. And I said, this is the average shift length of Sidney Crosby in the final game against Team Europe in the World Cup in Toronto, 39 seconds. And I said, what was most important here was number one, Sidney's status, and number two, his commitment to the team and doing everything he could to give us the best chance to win. And then I said, I started to recognize, that this could be part of my discussion. And so I had World Junior footage from that year. And if you remember, this was in Ostrava, Czech Republic, and Canada won the gold medal, beat the USSR, the Russians in the final, who had beaten Canada, our team, 6-0 earlier in the competition. And so I talked to the coach. He wanted to spend some time. We talked about, practicing the change plays, Jordan, as we do in practice, out changing your opponent. Why we can win. If we win the change game, we can win the game. And the reason we wanted to talk about this is because the Russians, as most opponents do when they hand somebody their lunch and meet them again, have a certain level of confidence, take a little bit for granted, are maybe giving themselves too much credit for being highly skilled, highly talented, et cetera, et cetera. And what we did notice is that the Russians took long shifts. And we made it very clear that through the change play, that we would be able to beat the Russians if we changed, within that 35, 40-second mark, pushed the pace. They didn't respect us. They thought their skill was superior. They thought they were a superior team in every way, shape, or form. We built a tournament with the help of Mark Hunter and Dale, putting our team together and putting the right people on the ice. But most important of all was the fact that we had practiced the change play. We recognized pace, pushing the pace through, changing. And I showed the last clip of my presentation was when we scored the go-ahead goal against Russia. It was a change play. Puck went deep, one forechecker, Jordan. Two forwards went off, changed 1D. We pushed the puck back to one of the D in the neutral zone, RD in the neutral zone, so we could complete the change. And then we worked our change play. Bang, bang, breakaway, scored. And the Russians, you could see all 5 of them outside the blue line of their end. They were dead tired. They couldn't catch us. And so I equated that to business. I equated that to, you've got to be prepared to change. You've got to be able to stay ahead of the curve. You've got to be able to push the pace and be a leader, and you've got to be able to sacrifice something in order to make sure that to stay in a position, in the pole position, whether it's in business or hockey, you've got to be prepared to change. And the beauty of hockey is that changing on the fly is incumbent with winning hockey. And out changing your opponent is incumbent with winning hockey. And if you took someone's number and you put it on a board and you said, this is 39 seconds. This is the average shift length of Sidney Crosby in the final game. If you can find someone, and even if you think back to it, sorry to dominate, if you remember the goal that Mitch Marner set up in Toronto, where he lost his stick, came flying by the bench, the trainer handed him the stick. Mitch Marner went in, made a great pass, scored the goal. The bench, the trainer on the bench was aware. He was part of, that play. He was a part of being alert and ready and prepared to participate in whatever needed to be done in that moment in time. And that's all part of, the impulse and the spontaneity of the game, the strategy behind change plays, the strategy behind being ready on the bench, all of those things, to me, equate to winning hockey. And the fact of the matter is, I really like what Craig and Jordan have shared with us. McKinley, you as well. I just think that, we're as good as we want to be as long as we recognize selfless hockey, recognize that if we don't know what we're good at, we'll never know what we're good for. But we have to stress being good at playing without the puck. And being able to chronicle that and being able to manage that and being able to applaud that with your great players. With those that come in with sort of a mindset of I'm a go-to person, I'm offensive. Really, at the end of the day, Canada started really winning World Cups with National Hockey League players and World Junior players when the very best players were on the ice, but sacrificed themselves to play with the character required to play without the puck. And that started in 2002 with the National Hockey League and the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City.
Thanks very much, Tom. I think, Craig, with GHC, there's been so much change and turnover. New volunteers will come in, new executives, and you've been with the GHC growing up, and you've returned from Notre Dame, and you understand the importance of creating a culture for success. And in our mission statement, we want to achieve outcomes. We want to win championships, but we can't lose sight of the process. And that's why I wanted to have this call, Craig. You get the best of the best. You got a chance to work with them. And I think all of those coaches working with them now on their club teams, starting in minor hockey and in elite U13, are beginning to learn winning habits. And that's not at the sacrifice of offensive skill. It's respecting its importance, but not overvaluing it to get recognized, to get that scholarship, and not be as positive an influence on the team and achieve the outcome you wish. So that's one of the reasons I had the call, Craig, and I'm really glad. And are there any other incidents or stories and lessons that you can share with the group from the overall experience? Because I watched you play. I texted you after the Atlantic game. They got to the final and you beat them in the preliminary. And I saw they were a talented team. You beat a team that was deeper than you, more cohesive than you, but you beat them. And they got to the final, as did Quebec. So I think it's a wonderful experience the program of excellence provides, Tom. They have 6 zones in each province, and they select a provincial team, and they have the national championships. And Craig, you've experienced the Canada Winter Games, assisting Carla McLeod winning a gold medal for Alberta. And I don't know if you can talk about that. It's a success story. But I know I've had conversations with Carla about the time it took to get buy-in from everybody to accept their different roles.
Yeah, there's still a lot of that 2019 that's fresh just because of how that worked out for us. I mean, the buy-in was the biggest piece we had to get, and at that time back then it was Rink Kelowna, it was POE, and they had the best team in Western Canada. They had a lot of success. Three of their players played for Team Canada, won gold at the Worlds that year. So being the Winter Games in February, early March, all that was done. The pressure of making Team Canada at the U18 level was gone, and these guys could just focus on playing the way we wanted to. And we didn't start out great. Our first game, we lost 6-2 to BC. Like we that's not a great start. But what we did is we played the game the right way, so we could use that game to showcase the way to play. We ended up going the next day against Atlantic. We beat them in a shootout, which was a fluky goal that went in. It hit the goalie in the chest and somehow rolled in the net. We win that game, and then we lose to Ontario. Ontario, obviously traditionally has the top market in Canada with all those good players. We lose to them and get into the quarterfinals, and that's when our games really turned around because we had a lot of good video that we used to show them. And then we beat Manitoba. We've got BC again. We beat BC 2-1 in overtime, and then we got Quebec in the finals and beat them. So short-term competitions, we're trying to get better every game. But I think the big thing that we did, and again this year, is we did a lot of video because you don't have a lot of time with these kids, and with their club teams, they all play very different. So to get them to play, we needed them to play. We did a lot of video, a lot of individual stuff, a lot of line stuff, and a lot of group stuff just about here's the right ways we need to play. And the games are quick and fresh, so we're able to have that conversation of here's a play that worked out for us, chipped it in, had a great forecheck, had an F3 high, went low to high, went east to west, created scoring chances. But look at why we didn't score here. We had no net front presence. Look at this opportunity. We didn't score, but look at the chances we got off it for having net front presence. So to bring that back to the question you asked me, I think video, now that we have every team capable of using video with the Instat, trying to get our coaches to use it and me to help them use it on a more regular basis, that'll help us, especially with that hockey sense of playing without the puck. Talking about that, especially at the 15s and 18s level. 13s, we're still trying to get them to play the game the right way. But that video piece once in a while can help. The challenge for us, as you and I know, Wally, is how do we get video shown at a rink? They don't all have TVs outside of our 2 AAA teams. So the Zoom calls and things like that is probably where we have to go. But again, we can ask Travis, we can ask Jordan, or even we got Cam there. What's that like? They've got lives, they're volunteers, they've got multiple family members. So that's the challenge is there's only 24 hours in a day, and not everyone's like you and I, Wally, that have time to cut video just because we're bored and we have fun doing it.
Well, Cam and Travis and Jordan, I don't know how you utilize Instat, but I just hope Cam, your daughter, looks at her shifts, and that's all. And maybe when you look at them with her, you can ask her, "What do you see? What did you do well? What can you do better?" And I think to every coach at GHC and every parent that would be an exercise where they're going to learn. They're looking and they're thinking about themselves and what they did or didn't do. And the light bulb should start to go on. They'll develop a higher hockey IQ that way. And Craig, as you know, one of the most lacking skills at every level, and I'm talking national team right down to our level, is passing. Passes are good, but receiving isn't. So pass timing, head up, eyes up, looking for options, players getting open. There's fundamental tactical skills that have to be mastered to do that. The tactical skills they've mastered are toe drags escape moves, taking the puck to the net or putting it on the net. They're not thinking of options as they are a threat themselves. Ultimately, the game's got a long ways to go in my mind. Tom Malloy and I have often talked about it's not centers and wingers anymore. It's F1, F2, F3, and D1 and D2. In fact, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hockey because you'll have some defensemen will be up on the rush, initiating it as one of the top first three, not carrying the puck the length of the ice while the forwards wait. So I think, Greg, all we can do is our very best. And the reason we're here at the elite level is to serve the needs of Team Alberta and Hockey Canada. And we want every one of our players to be the best they can be. Strive for that scholarship. Strive for the national team. Strive for the provincial team. And dream big. And the journey is going to be the most valuable experience of all. Tom, do you have anything to add? You've had so much experience in your lifetime at highest levels of competition. And I'm trying to sort of bring you down to earth of what we're dealing with.
Oh, hey, listen, Wally, I'm down to earth.
Yeah.
I've been fired 3 times. So, but believe me, I'm down to earth. I think what's really cool about this discussion, and it's great, a couple of things. Number one, I think, Craig, one of your biggest achievements so far, and I don't know you and all that you've done other than win, is on my Hollywood Squares screen right here is a young lady over here on my left in the middle line who happens to be coaching, who you coached. That's achievement, and that is legacy. And McKinley, I'm sure you'll be a terrific coach if you're not already. I don't know you either, but please stay with it. Obviously, you've had some terrific mentoring and some terrific experiences with Craig's help, amongst others. And I think if we do anything, let's ask ourselves why we coach. Why do we coach? And yes, it's fun to win, and it's important to want to be the best at something, recognizing that made it, did it, got it, have it, found it, whatever it is. I don't know what it is other than the journey. The journey is it. And it's funny how when you win, Craig, and you did, and you'll have that memory for a lifetime, and the conclusion of the game, and the girls ecstatic. But I think over time you'll think about the season, or at least that short-term competition and how you built it, and you've referred to it many times already, the process.
Yeah.
And that's it. I know I got the president and CEO job at Hockey Canada, and one of them was because I was fired 3 times. And I brought that experience with me and the learnings from that and the humility that goes along with that. And thank God I had really good teams and good players and good managers to help me have some success on the score sheet along the way. But at the end of the day, it's the whole thing. It's the whole continuum of coaching and leadership and being a parent and a grandparent and all that kind of stuff. That is it. And McKinley, I wish you luck, and I'm really thrilled that you're on the call. I just think it's fantastic, and I'm sure I speak for all the fellas on the call as well. And Craig, kudos to you to have a young lady that's had enough of an impact from you to decide to coach. I think it's awesome.
Well, I don't know if I impacted her that much. I think she probably at the time didn't like me a whole lot because I did push her a little bit at that event. Had to push our team a little bit. But we've got a few like that with our association. There's a bunch that have given back. We're starting to see more young ladies come back out of the college and want to coach, and to me, that's awesome. That's what got me into coaching. When I finished playing, I took a couple of years away from the game. I missed it, got back into coaching, and 22 years later, it's my full-time job, and And dealing, at this level, we are fortunate. We have coaches at GHC that want to get better. They allow guys like myself and Wally in their ears and question their practices and have good conversations around it. And they're open to learning and getting better. And I think that is the one where we are today at GHC versus the first time I came through. My daughter was coming through at U15. The coaching is very different, and they're much more open and wanting to learn versus still, oh, yeah, I played junior in the late 90s, and this is how we do it. I mean, we've got very open-minded coaches, and I think that's just kind of where our association is going today. Our coaching at all levels is strong, and fortunate we get to have Wally coming to do this. We use your daughter in our mental side of it, and I know Jeff Ovens. I got to coach with him, so I had a really great experience with Jeff. I wouldn't say it was great, but hey, I had an experience with Jeff. No, I'm just kidding. We did the Alberta Cup together like 15 years ago, so we've got a lot of really good resources around at the Fire, and they want us to invest in it and use it. So it's fortunate in my role, I get to actually build this and do this, and that's the part that gets me going every morning. Is that we're trying to make a better association, and put more kids into college hockey, and eventually bring more young women back to coach, because those pro jobs are getting more and more, and that league's going to expand a few more times. But in the next 10 years here, and people like my daughter might get a chance to coach professional hockey where 10 years ago they didn't. So it's good to see.
Hang on. Good job.
No, I want to thank everybody for joining. Really appreciate you being on. I'm going to edit bits and pieces of it and send it out, and I'm sure you've all filed away the stuff I've sent from the shark session, but do keep it in a folder for yourself to look at on a day where you might have time. This meeting to me was really critical. We've done 2 covenant sessions. Craig's about to schedule the parent meeting mission statement sessions so that we know why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And we're trying to create a culture, synergistic culture, sticking to a process that is going to be successful. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you at the rink, I'm sure. Take
Thank you,
care.
everybody.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Wally. Thanks,
Thanks,
Tom.
Wally.
Thanks,
Craig.
Wally. Thanks, Tom. Craig.
You're welcome. Thank
All
you.
right, see you guys. See everybody.
Thanks, Wally.
Soon.
Take care.
Good to see you, McKinley.
Night all.
Good to see you too, Jordan.
I found this the other day.
That's ancient.
And Laura that coached with us, she's now officially a lawyer in BC. She
Oh, really?
got the
That's
call to the
crazy.
bar. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty
Wow.
awesome.
Crazy. Small world.
It is. All right. You take care, kiddo.
Thanks, you too.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.